In this video, we'll be tying a variation on the Whitlock fox squirrel nymph. It's actually going to be tied as a wet fly, and it's a very simple pattern. It's also an extremely effective pattern. One of my all-time personal favorites, actually. It's worked for me fishing spring creek trout, steelhead, and salmon. We're going to start out with a TMC 3761. That's a nymph wet fly hook. This is a size 14. You can fish these big. You can fish these up to size 8 to imitate a golden stonefly, down to a small, very small pattern. My best success has really come in the size 12 and 14 range, however. So we're going to start out with our thread base, and our thread base is a 8/0 unithread in camel. It's kind of a nice dark reddish brown thread. Okay, we got our thread base started. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap down to the barb of the hook. Now on our way down, we're going to catch in a piece of copper wire for our rib material. And I'm just going to catch that in right here and work our way down to the barb of the hook. Once we've reached the barb, we're going to tie in our tail. And the tail is actually the namesake of the fly. It's a fox squirrel tail. And you can see here on the edges we've got all these beautiful fibers. These long, beautiful fibers on the side of the fox squirrel tail. I'm going to tear off just a bunch of those, and I'm going to tie those in. You can try to line up the fibers if you want to get a bushier tail, but it's a rather long, thin tail. I just find a nice sparsely tied long tail works well for me. Okay, so we trimmed away the excess there on the front end, and we're just going to make some more wraps up here to secure everything down, lash it down to the hook shank before we get going. Kind of tidy things up a bit. When you use this 8/0 thread, you can get away with more wraps. Okay. So now we've got the tail tied in. We're going to now start dubbing the body. Now, to dub the body, you can either blend your own dubbing using the reddish fibers from the fox squirrel tail, or you can cheat and actually Whitlock's SLF dubbing is a blend of the fox squirrel hair and some flash, and that's what I'm going to use tonight in the interest of time. It's actually a great dubbing. It's a nice blended superfine dubbing with that little bit of extra flash, and it wraps around the hook just great, or it wraps around the thread just great. It just creates just this beautiful thin tapered body. Okay. And we're going to catch that in. And we're going to try to wrap that kind of tight. If it starts to come unwound from the thread, use your finger to mash it in there, or just rewrap your dubbing. And we're going to wrap this up in a tapered carrot shape up to about halfway to 2/3 up the hook. Okay. Now that we've caught that in, we're going to counter wrap our wire rib for durability. So, it's 1 wrap, 2 wraps, 3 wraps, 4. And we'll secure that. 3 wraps behind the wire, 3 wraps in front. Now we have our thorax that we're going to dub, and to dub the thorax we're going to use, actually we're going to cheat again, we're going to use a darker Whitlock SLF brown pattern. I'm going to take a pinch of this thorax blend dubbing, dub a little wax onto my thread, and I don't care if I glop it on there. And I'm going to wrap that thorax, make it a little bit fatter than the body, the abdomen, just slightly fatter. Put a dark spot on top of that. There we go. So now we've dubbed the thorax, the abdomen, and put in the tail. Now comes the fun part. To make this a soft hackle, what I've done is I prepared a brown Hungarian partridge feather. We're going to tie it in at the tip here, just above the thorax. You can see I've stroked the fibers back for easier wrapping. And we're going to clean this little tip off here. And we're just going to make 1, maybe 2 quick wraps. And I'm hoping that I don't break this. Okay, made my wraps around. I'm going to run my thread through just to secure it. Stroke the fibers back a little bit. Run it through again. Secure it some more. At this point I don't care if it's ugly. I just want to get it wrapped. Okay. So now I've secured that. You can see that ugly stem sticking off of there. I'm just going to trim away the excess here. Okay. Okay, so now I've got those fibers stroked back. And I'm going to wrap ahead. Now the idea in this pattern is to work those fibers backwards so they kind of tent over and around that body. Now we have to just whip finish. This is probably my favorite part, tying a fly, is whip finishing on a nice smooth head on this. And of course I catch a fiber in there, but that's okay. There we have it. Trim away the excess. And there we have Whitlock's Fox Squirrel Nymph soft hackle variant.